So we're going to move right into our first panel discussion, which is our fireside chat focusing on career opportunities beyond the job site. I would like to now introduce Jennifer Eastman, President of Imark Canada, who will introduce our panelists and lead us through this discussion. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Danielle. Hello, I'm Jennifer Eastman, President of Imark Canada, and here to join the discussion are Leslie Dibling, Conestoga Heavy Construction Association, Natasha Callender Wilson, Vice President of Bass Installation, and Summer Nicholl, National Shurjoint Sales Manager, Aalberts Integrated Piping Systems. So earlier this week, the four of us took some time to get together to learn a little bit about each other. And during that discussion, Summer, you had made a statement that you didn't deliberately choose a path to a career in the world of construction. And I believe the rest of us can attest to the same. So I'm hoping that you could take some time and share with the group how your journey began.
Yes, Jennifer, I believe the words I used was growing up, I wasn't aspiring to work in the mechanical piping industry. As a young girl growing up, my path evolved in around 2008 and 2009. My previous experience was primarily in advertising and marketing and self-employed. And during that era, we were going into a little bit of downturn. And the first budget that's typically cut is the marketing and advertising budget. So I started looking for something a little bit more stable, and I was speaking with an associate of mine that had mentioned, hey, why don't you look into electrical or plumbing? Because no matter what, people will always have to turn their lights on and flush their toilets. And it seemed like such a simple statement, but it's something that stuck with me over the last 15 years. And that is what led me into pursuing something in electrical and or plumbing. And in 2009, I landed in the mechanical industry, starting out entry level in sales. In an industry I had at the time no experience or know nothing about, but it looked like a great opportunity for growth. I mean, there was a big generational gap as well, from not just from the women's side, but from the age gap of an industry that at the time did not have what I saw as succession planning. So as being in my late 20s, I looked at it as a great opportunity. And here I am 15 years later, and have transitioned with the same brand, but with a few different companies carrying that brand, and in a variety of different capacities and roles within that organization. And now I'm working across Canada with the brand I work with.
So throughout that journey, what would you say your greatest challenge was?
Well, there were many challenges. So, the cards were against me from the get-go. Being a young female entering a very male-dominant industry was one major challenge. A challenge not having the mechanical aptitude and background was another challenge. So, the product knowledge as well as the systems and application knowledge. But one of the biggest challenges was being a female in a very male-dominant industry. And I still recall my first major event or trade show that I went to, and in a venue where I was one of three females. Like I took a look around the room, and of 300 people, I was one of three. And one of the other three was the event coordinator, and the third was another one within the industry. And I just looked at it like, wow, it was eye-opening. And over the last 15 years, to see the change in landscape, where now the female presence is closer to, I estimate, 30 to 40% at these same events. It's very promising to see that how we've evolved over the last 15 years, which is not a long time.
Right. I always used to say I used to love trade shows because there was never a lineup for the ladies' washroom.
We're starting to see the lineup now.
Yeah, no, I know. Natasha, how about you? How did you get started and what were some of the greatest challenges you came across?
Yeah, it's funny you ask. I recall just a few days ago, actually, we did a webinar about a similar topic. And I remember growing up, I was always encouraged to take things apart, put things back together, figure out how things work. And of course, this was well before Google, Siri, and everything else, right? But I think the curiosity of just understanding how things work, that really kind of propelled me into where I am today. And it's, looking back, I started probably in the late 90s, early 2000s in the construction industry. I decided to go to school and get an education, try to be an accountant. That was kind of my focus. Working for just various part-time jobs and just, as a bartender, working for Shoppers Drug Mart and trying to make it. And at the time, my dad had his construction company. It wasn't known as Fast Installation back then. It was a different company under a different title. But he said, you know what, come work for me. Come and see what this is all about. So I was able to at least apply some of my accounting practices from my education into the business. And, I remember again, like just working side by side with him. He's pricing jobs by night and working on the tools by day. And I'm helping him with payroll and accounts payable, receivables. And before you know it, it was like, we need help, and things were starting to kind of augment. So it happened organically where, over the years, we've grown the business, we've hired more key talent to help us run the organization. And it's funny because I never imagined that I would be here, but here I am and loving every day of it. I love what we do, and looking back at the city of Toronto and knowing that we've built these amazing skyscrapers and installed all this glass, it just brings us so much pleasure and joy to know that we're contributing to that. And I can almost attest to every single one of my team members. They feel quite honestly the same, knowing that we're all contributing to this great city.
Right.
Yeah, I think some of the challenges, I think definitely the fact that it is changing. I'd say about 30% of us are now women. And I remember even walking onto one of our projects last year at the Well, and I was so delighted to see even other Black women. And I think inside we all kind of giggled and were rejoicing and kind of giving each other high fives just to see that there's more of a presence of women in the trades, women in construction, whether it be, working as a project manager, as a bookkeeper, but in the space of construction. And there is a place for all of us. So
we talked earlier this week and you had made a comment, we shared that a few of us have daughters, and you had made a great comment about your daughter and how she sees you as a role model. So could you share that? Because I just thought
absolutely.
It was awesome.
And as you know, today's a little bit of a rough day for me, so I apologize.
Yes.
But I had planned to bring my doll, not my daughter, but my doll. But the story goes, so this was about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and her and I were kind of trolling through Toys R Us, and I had just come back from a site, and she's seen me in my hard hat with my high-V vest on, and I've also done a few Habitats for Humanity, right? So she's seen all that, and even though I work in the office, I had my gear. So we're strolling through Toys R Us, and of course on the shelf we're passing the Barbie section, and she sees this Black Barbie doll dressed as a construction worker, and she's like, oh my God, Ma, you're famous.
That's
and
awesome.
Just that, like, alone, I said, you know what, I'm doing what I need to do, not just for me, but for her, for all the other girls out there, so that they can see there is presence. And this was well before the Barbie movie and all that, and I still have my doll in her box, and I really wish I'd brought it, but I will definitely show the picture if anyone's interested. I can't find her anymore, so that's why it's rare for me to even have her still. But for my daughter Naomi to just see that and to understand that we can really truly be anything we want, sky's the limit. So
yeah, that's so cool. And Leslie, when we were talking, you had shared that earlier in your career, there had been a lot of challenges when you were looking to move into a new role. And I think those challenges are kind of what stimulated you and inspired you to start your new company that you shared with us. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so for me, growing up, I grew up on a farm, rough and tough. And my dad actually was in the industry. He built big dairy barns. So I've always been a part of it, but never really grasped the challenges that women had in the industry. I got into the industry. My brother was electrocuted in a workplace accident at 16. So he was welding in a workplace experience, and somebody did not lock out, tag out on a machine. and he was electrocuted, and he had a traumatic brain injury at 16. And our lives changed as a family. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was being, 2 years older than him at the time. And I knew that for me, I needed to make sure that no family ever went through what we went through. And I really wanted people to know that, there's workplace injuries, but really the extent of the damage that happens to a family that's been a part of that. And I think that's something else that we have to look at. And I got into the industry, and I thought, oh my goodness, like this is different. This is not for the faint of heart. But I knew that I wanted to be part of an industry that was, something I could be proud of, something I could drive by and say I was a part of that, and work with a team. And that was really important to me. And as I got into it, I started my career in laboring, really, and then health and safety. And I really saw that I really wanted to be a part of, the upper echelon, as I would look at it as a female, and thought, when I looked around, I didn't look like everybody else that was at the table. But I knew that I deserved a seat at the table, but that it wasn't going to be easy, and I was probably going to cry quite a bit, and that's okay, but I would cry in private, and I would eventually move into an organization that really didn't have many females as part of their organization. There was a few roles, field roles that had women there, your typical admin roles in an office where you would see generally women. But I was brought in as a site superintendent, and I got a quick lesson to what you could do, what you couldn't do, how you probably should act, maybe not ask the questions. And I'm just not like that. So, for me, I kind of went against the grain, and I, stumbled, and I probably put my foot in my mouth a few times. But you know what? I realized that I deserve a table. I deserve a seat at the table just as much as everybody else, and I needed to persevere. But I knew that I was only going to be stronger in numbers. So when I started looking around at some of the associations that are in our area in Kitchener-Waterloo, I came across Conestoga Heavy Construction Association, and I, did some research on Google, and I found out, who the president was, and I had emailed him and said, like, you should have a women in construction group. And he said, well, then you should do that. And so we quickly kind of put it together and really, what was important. And we did a couple inaugural events where we brought the women out, and we couldn't believe, the support that we were getting, and thought, that this needs to be something that, the associations are taking a look at. And this is a different group of people that are, adding to our talent pool and just bringing in diverse perspectives. So we started Women Driving Diversity by Conestoga Heavy. And for me, kind of a game changer, where I knew that I had a purpose. And I had met who's now partner, Agnes Watkinson, and she was, full of the same piss and vinegar I was. And it was like I met my, spirit animal. And I'd gone through a really tumultuous journey in the past, I'd say 4 or 5 months, when I left my previous company and going through a hiring process. And I had done 27 interviews from Toronto to Chicago, and coming with an MBA and NCSO, a lead. Education's always been important, and not just necessarily school, but courses and upgrading. And I thought, like, this is ridiculous. I mean, so if I'm having this much trouble and I'm outgoing, there's got to be other women and other diverse members and just people in general that need some help. And when Agnes and I were talking, we thought, what, like, there's a place for us to have our own wings and not be part of rigid corporate structures. So we just said, we're going to do this, and we're going to work with companies that stay with our, align with our core values and what we bring. And we know that we can help many different companies in fractional leadership, where, parts of our business are really volatile. And we sometimes, in smaller companies, we really can't have big salaries. So we want to be part of, change and doing things different, and making sure that the people matter, employee development, and really taking care of our people. Because, if we look by 2026, 20% of our workforce is eligible for retirement. And women are, a great part of the talent pool that have a different perspective. And I wanted to be a part of that. So I'm, now involved in a lot of different construction associations and really just in whatever I can be. And I think that for me, this group of women that I've now become a part of and really, we've banded together, is really what's gotten me through this journey. And that support system of just all different levels of women in different parts of the industry that just support each other, is just really unbreakable. And I think that that's what carried me through. So I'm excited to continue my journey in the industry as a business owner. I'm sure there's going to be some highs and lows, but no more higher or lower than I was during that trying to find a job or a career. So I'm excited to, be the future of my own destiny and just kind of keep working at it.
Right. So we've chatted, we all come from different aspects of the construction world. I come from electrical, there's building infrastructure, there was paving, construction. We're all women. Do any of you, as you get out there and you meet other women, is there a commonality that you see in interests, personalities, perseverance, work ethic with the women that you come across? That, because it is a challenging industry. So, are we all tough? I don't think so. We all have thick skin, maybe. But what do you feel is a commonality amongst the women in the industry that kind of keeps us going? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
If I may, I'll jump in on that one. I think the fact that we're in construction and we get things done, right? We know how to execute from start to finish. What I see is a lot of the women that are surrounded, at least, particularly my industry in glazing, is that we just don't take no for an answer. We'll figure it out. We find a way. There's going to be roadblocks, there'll be challenges, but we don't back down from that. We almost even invite them because we know at the end of the day, it's even more rewarding to get that win when there's a little bit more of a challenge behind it. And I really think that's even just how our industry is as a whole. Like, buildings have to get built. If it's too difficult, we can't say, oh, I'm sorry, we can't fix that. We don't know how to do this, and walk away. We get things done. So, and I think that's really where, I think the commonality among even just people in the industry, right? Whether we are women, men, etc. But I think the women, definitely, they just won't take no for an answer. And whether it's no to that job interview, like what Leslie had to go through, she still found a way to make this happen. So I think that's really what the commonality is for me. That's my perspective.
Yeah. Summer, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just, women bring a different perspective in general, right? So whether it's a natural instinct to not take no for an answer. I mean, in other roles outside of our careers, I mean, it's just, you figure it out, whether it's like parenting or motherhood or whatnot. You can't just give up and take no for an answer, like Natasha said. So I think bringing the dynamic, a different dynamic to the industry with that determination and with a solution-based focus is a commonality that I see across many female peers that I work with.
Okay. Leslie, anything on that you want to add in?
I mean, what I would say is that every time I meet different women in the industry, one thing that we can all agree on is that we are not tolerant of, generational silos that we're kind of pushed into. And I think every time we meet, we become more empowered. And we're, as an industry, I think we're championing, moving from hierarchies to networks, and really from, those privacy and those silos to, engagement and transparency. And I think that the commonality is that we're really everybody just wants it to be better, because at the end of the day, nobody's coming to rescue this industry. And we're here. And, the thing is, I hear a lot sometimes, especially in conversations where off the cusp men will say, well, women are just too emotional. And I always say, well, that's fine. Yes, I will maybe shed some tears, but you also will throw things. So we just, we're different. Yes, of course, we can all acknowledge that we are different and we process differently and we have different kinds of emotions. And that's okay. And that we won't break. You don't have to be fragile with us. Like, we are here. And I think it's just about the resiliency. And that's really the commonality, is just that we're here. And every time it just gets better and better because more just show up. And that's really what it's about, is just showing up and being there and being authentic and really sticking to your core values. I think it's important. And I think that's what a lot of women will say, is that they remain their authentic self and true to themselves. And if you really try to deviate from that, then that's when you'll really run into issues.
So we show up, we work hard, we don't take no for an answer. We juggle a lot of things. So we juggle in the work environment, but at the same time, we juggle the home environment. And if you have children, you add that onto it. You add aging parents. We talked about work-life balance the other day and the challenges of that. So I don't know if anybody wants to weigh in on, your support networks, what has worked for you, what has been the biggest obstacle, just to share with the group.
Yeah, I'll start on that, Jennifer. As women evolve our presence in the industry, it's great, but one dynamic that lags behind, I still believe, is the work-life balance for a female, full-time working female. I have a wonderful support system personally myself, with my husband, and my family, but there still are components that are heavily relied on as a female in the home. And whether it's like emotional support, having two daughters, whether it's just different things. So I feel like the work-life balance still remains a challenge. It is evolving, but I see, it's unspoken of. But then once you connect with women on a more personal level within the industry, you find that everybody faces very similar challenges, right? So when it's 3 p.m. and I'm across the country and I get a phone call from the children's school, that panic that hits, right? But mom's the first one that gets the call, right? Even though dad's 10 minutes away from the school at the time. But we just carry, we still have that heavy load of caring in our personal life. So it is a struggle to find that balance and set certain boundaries as well. And I think sometimes at some points in my career, it was, I think, is referred to or even perceived as a weakness of women, that we still do have that imbalance. But I would beg to say that differently, is that our capabilities of multitasking and juggling and siloing and still being able to come out on top in our professional life just speaks volumes for what we are capable, what females are capable of doing.
100%. I just wanted to add 2 cents to that, because I know my colleagues here on the panel know, but I'm currently sitting in a hospital right now waiting for my husband to come out of a procedure, and this was thrown at me very last minute. And these are some of the things that, as a primary caregiver, as a wife, as a mom, as a fur mom, whatever it is that we're caring for as women, we are able to juggle it. And this is part of me not saying no. As women, not saying no, because we will figure it out. Give us the opportunity, and we should. But yeah, it was a very, very interesting time for me, because this panel discussion meant everything we had prepared for months. And then last minute, there was a decision that this procedure had to happen for my husband, which is fine. But again, instead of saying no, I had to just find ways to pivot and figure it out. And here we are. So I just wanted to at least mention that, because it's not just me that this would happen to. It happens to all of us. And I think by building those networks and leaning into those networks for support, that's where you can really find the strength and know that it's okay. It's okay to have things come up. It's okay that you might not be able to attend every event. but there are good reasons why. And if you can, you will, right? And you do, and hence where we are. So
Yeah. And I think, I look back when I started 35 years ago, and technology has really given us the ability now to be able to multitask, to be able to have a better work-life balance. Back then there were no cell phones. You had to do phone calls at the end of the day before you drove home. You couldn't just send an email. It was a memo that went out in a mail package, and it just boggles my brain that that's how we did business back then. So with technology today, you can travel, you have FaceTime, you stay connected with your family. We're doing a webinar. We just went through COVID where none of us could stay physically connected. So technology has been a wonderful tool, but I feel that it's also brought upon a higher demand of performance, availability. People think you should be available 24 hours a day now. And it brings some challenges. So I don't know if you've experienced any challenges where with employers, expectations are, your response is immediate. I don't know if there's anything you can share on that.
Well, I'll speak to the challenges during the COVID times. I mean, and for all the females on here that are parents and working, and to have that imposed on us as working females, being in the home as well as take on the role of full-time teacher and managing that was a feat in itself. But in terms of this. The managing the time, and I think it's all about setting boundaries and expectations as well, and being a doer and wanting to get things done and wanting to go over and above it. That is a struggle in itself as well, because you want to have be able to give that answer, provide the answer, or you want to be able to give that support or help that support, but you have to manage the expectations of the turnaround of the time. You have to manage the expectations of time zones and deliverables. Myself, I'm on the West Coast, so my days start quite early, but then they don't end as early as the East Coast does. So I think it's managing time, managing expectations, and setting boundaries on things. And in some of our roles that maybe more senior, more leadership roles, that's a challenge in itself, because you need to be as accessible to the entire team, whether they're no matter what time zone they're on. But
I look at it slightly different.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think too, there's also room now for flexibility that there wasn't before. And as a working mom, if my daughter has a PA day, like, why should I have to take the day off? Why couldn't I work from home? And there are some opportunities here that we can be a little bit more flexible and at least offer that as even part of our new policies when it comes to hiring and best practices for employment. So I do see both sides of it. And I do agree with you, Summer, that we do need to have boundaries, absolutely. Because, I would see emails flying all sorts of times in the night, and it's usually just someone trying to get their thoughts out. Not that I have to respond to it, but I often do. But at the same time, it's just now we have more flexibility that if we do need to offer some, again, gesture to some of our staff because of situations that are happening at home, there's opportunity for that as opposed to being more of a challenge.
Yeah. And in terms of boundaries, I mean, setting my own personal boundaries with myself. So being able to restrain from checking that email at 10 p.m. When you're checking your personal emails or getting caught up on school things or personal appointments and stuff like that, being able to restrain from handling that task and setting my own boundaries within my own self-control, try to handle everything within that 24-hour time span.
I'll probably add something here. And I kind of want to go back to the support system, because there was something I kind of wanted to add there. But I think one thing that's really changing in the industry is that people with, when we're looking at diversity, not necessarily racially or, ethically or where we come from there, but we look at different parts of diversity. And, when there's a different perspective on, some people just have different working hours. I function very differently to sometimes during the day, like sometimes it's very important for me for, mental clarity to, get to the gym or figure that out. But, I think it's important to make sure that, organizations are really making sure that, maybe on the end of an email, we say that our hours may differ. So as long as we're attending to things that we need to be doing and, making sure we're not disappointing our team in any capacities, just acknowledging that people have different times of the day where maybe they're just a bit more productive. You'll see an email from me probably 95% of the time at 4:15 in the morning, and that is not an auto send. That is, I am up, 4 a.m. and that's when I'm working, because I work my best when my phone's not going off. And those are my boundaries that I've set. And I've had to really work hard at that as well. I have serious FOMO when I think that I'm not being included or I want to be a part of something. So I've really had to be accountable to myself and be okay that that's okay. And something else I wanted to talk about a little bit, and we kind of talked about it, but is the roles of sponsorship and mentorship. When we look at different organizations when they're developing this for the women or their different resource groups. For me, I have a supportive home life and that, but in the workplace, I've found that the support there has been something that's been monumental in my career in terms of, just even the powerful people that have brought me along, that include me. And sometimes I think it's important we talk about, what important takeaways maybe from this conversation is that, if there's men joining us, and I hope there are, really, it goes a long way when you extend kindness and empathy, just bringing someone to lunch or asking, how their day is, or just even a little bit about them, and just checking in on people, I think is really important. And I think when you do that, you create inclusiveness, and it doesn't have to be something that's, an overreach, or something that maybe is mildly uncomfortable, but just really that inclusion and that sponsorship and mentorship. And really, if they're part of something, really making sure that they're having credit and taking credit in those conversations, or bringing them to the table and letting them, speak. I think it goes a long way. And for me, I've had a lot of mentors and I've had some significant sponsorships. I can tell you, the president of CHCA, Mark Mello, has really just been, a light for us, making sure that we're there and, and advocating. And there, we talk about making sure that the conversations are there. I think one thing for everybody to remember is that, we can't talk about women in construction without talking about men in construction. At the end of the day, we are all at the same table, and we're here. Like we've said, we're not going anywhere. So I think it's really important, those sponsorship and mentorships, to look, at those parts. And I think as a woman now, I have women that reach out and, just say the nicest things and kindest things. And I think, even just in the little articles that I write, I think I'm just helping. And that's really what's important. So I think, as much as we get caught up in, the fight of being here, coming to the battle of, trying to show up authentically, I think we have to remember that we make a difference. There's people watching. And much like Natasha said, her daughter, without, we'll see her in her PPE, but then to be able to put that together, to recognize when she sees a Barbie dressed like that, that is just different. That's just a different level of support. Maybe it's not, she's not making dinner or she's not, doing all the things, but that support that she says when she says that, like, mommy, like, you're famous, like that support alone, is really what drives us. I'm a single mom and my son is 14 and he says, like, mom, like, you're a badass, and that's pretty cool. So for me, that's like, there's all kinds of support, and that sponsorship, mentorship is, so if there's business owners here, to make sure that, you're just passing along a compliment or just taking somebody out to lunch that maybe you just never normally would. And that can go a long way. So,
yeah. I think the era of the old boys club is definitely gone. And I think, as the world is becoming more diverse and now we're diversity and inclusion, we really are just an industry of professionals. And I know when I started into the industry, I wanted to be known as a professional first, a woman second. And I personally think we're at a point where men look at us as professionals and we look at men as professionals. It's not you're a man and you're a woman, because we are in the era of equality. And I think that's important that we're all on the same page now. And moving forward, I see that just becoming the norm. So we talk
100%.
about, what's that?
Yeah, I just said 100%. And I think where we can actually make a difference, Leslie, you mentioned this. This is something that our company is currently doing, and it's especially with recruitment, right? Making sure that there's no biases and that we're not stereotyping resumes as we see them before we even get to see if the person has the qualifications for the job. So Leslie, you mentioned this. I don't want to steal your thunder, but again, it is something that we do at FAST, and it's just removing names. Like, we don't look at names when it comes to the recruitment process, because we want to make sure that the person who's filling the position is going to actually have the requirement and meet the merits to do the job. So it's always about the professionalism first, the qualities first, versus, you know, what part of the city do they live? Oh, what's their name? And would there be a problem? You know, whichever, like whatever comes to mind. But it helping to instill those type of policies in our organizations will help, because now you're looking at a pool of qualified individuals and you're looking at the qualities over anything else. And I think that's really where we can make a difference, especially as business owners or anybody who has any impact, and being able to change our policies and procedures. That's really the first step on how do we find more suitable people to do the job, whether it be women, men, black, white. Again, we're not looking at that. So it's just something I had to mention, because it's one of the ways we can actually do something in terms of trying to change the narrative of hiring more women, hiring more young people, etc. So
Yeah, I'll just
I
comment
lost.
on that a little bit
Yeah.
too. There was in the Bridge to Gender Equity report that came out in 2023, there was a stat that said companies in which women held 20% or more management roles generated 2.4% higher cash flows. You know, so I think there's something to be said about, you know, women at the table, and yes, we're sharing the same sandbox. And I think it's important to, you know, make sure that we're having those conversations, and that we're here and making sure that our, you know, our organizations are really having inclusive corporate cultures, and that we're really, you know, looking at that. And really, I always say at the end of the day, let's focus on the work and not who's doing it. And really just, we all have to work together, and we're here to work together. And I think that's important.
That's the biggest way we can really make the change, right? Is by, you know, for so long, I remember when we were looking for an HR manager at the time, I had always made assumptions that I need someone who can help write my policies, put the book together, do orientations, and just make sure that nobody, you know, everybody is working amicably together. Not realizing we needed way more than that. So when our director, well, she's now our director of people and culture, but when Sam, I'm calling her out, when Sam joined, she added a whole new level, which there was more inclusiveness. There was just so much more to offer than just the regular policies and procedures that HR carries. It was really about people first. And I really hope that my entire team feels that, because it's something that has just made me so proud to be able to say that, you know, working with FAST for all these years and being now an owner, I feel it every day that we truly do put our people first. And it's not about writing policies and procedures and making sure that people show up 9 to 5. It's making sure we have the right people to do the job. If they need the flexibility, it's there. It's trying to improve their growth through their journey of careers, and trying to support them and mentor them as well. And we're not just saying we're doing it, we're trying to show we're doing it. Like, we actually do it. And it just makes me so proud to have an organization like this, and to have a leader like Sam and her team and the rest of the team that we have at FAST. So again, I think it starts with the policies, it starts with the procedures. We're in positions to make those changes. So why don't we implement some new procedures and some new policies that can really drive who we're hiring, as opposed to just checking boxes.
Right. So talent acquisition and talent retention is like one of the hottest topics in the industry right now in each of the verticals. So how do we get more women into our industry? What do we as women in the industry need to do? What do companies need to do? There's a lot of great women out there, and how do we get them excited? Because it may not be a glamorous industry, but it is a fun industry with great people, and to be a part of building Canada, which drives the world economy, it's just very exciting. So thoughts on that? Like there's women hopefully in this presentation listening to us, and we want you to join. So how do we get them here?
Well, I'd say we can even partner with different organizations that are out there. But really, first and foremost, I'm coming back to those like, the simple things that we've tried to follow in our business, and how are we creating a culture that's more attractive? I know, for instance, we're members with the Ironworkers, and one thing that they've worked on and trying to get mandated in their collective agreement is that there's maternity leave or paternity leave. That was never a thing before. So if I have a female ironworker, she's choosing between whether having a family or a career. Like, that just sounds ridiculous, especially in this day and age.
Yeah.
So having partners like the unions who are implementing some of their changes and making sure we highlight that if we want skilled workers that are female, we have room for that. There's some flexibility there once again. And again, in our own organizations, it's really, we have control of how we want to narrate the discussions about work hours, about even, remote work opportunities, because frankly, if we are the primary caregivers for our children, for our parents, we may need those days where we can work from home. We may need the flexibility, like to Leslie's point, on working different hours during the day that's suited for us. So why are we not being more flexible to the needs of our people and keeping with these rigid policies and procedures that mandates it's a 9-to-5 economy? I think those days are over. We have to be more adaptive.
Yeah, I can add to that. I think one thing that's important to and Natasha just mentioned it, I think, we talk about women, and I never want to just be on that hill about that, because I think it continues to add to the segregation. But I think, like, as companies, we have to be very concerned about, it's a people problem right now where we're having these problems. But I don't necessarily, if we look at immigration and we look at numbers and we look at some of the trade schools enrollments, the people are here. I think we need to look at too, as, like we said, how do we make it a more attractive industry as a whole? And I think that is, not just women and diverse members, but everybody alike. We want to make sure that we're, young people, how are we getting in there and having these conversations? And I think it's, we're talking about women, but for women to keep having these conversations with the men in your office and with them, because I think it's important to make sure they understand. I mean, it's really hard for them to be behind us if they don't hear what we're saying. And I'm not saying that we need to harp on it all the time. But I think that we need to make sure that, the organizations that we're a part of, they have strategic priorities to make sure that it's an equitable organization. And that's for everybody around, to make sure that we're going there. And I know for myself, like a lot of the work that I do is, because I want to be able to be proud of an industry that I would be happy and feel comfortable with my son coming and wanting to work in. I think that we need to make sure that we are just showing what a good industry it is, and continuing to make sure that it's in our schools and we're spending time and giving back. We can't always take from the industry, and volunteering, I think that's a great way, showing there and having the conversations earlier. Let's start having conversations, before kids are looking to choose their courses in high school. Let's talk in grade 7 and 8. Let's talk about let's show them what's available, what they can be earning. I mean, that is something that, people are looking at, and let's educate. They're doing, making things where there's more tech credits. They have to have these things now. But we need to show that it's a safe, equitable industry, and we have to, on every part of it, not just physical safety. And we look at mental health, they make sure we're having those conversations as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even just in the name of the panel, like Women in Construction Beyond the Job Site, that just highlights, like, there's so many opportunities outside of the trade that are still industry related, and like whether it's marketing, engineering, legal, HR, the business side of things, statistics. There's so many opportunities within the industry that are outside of the tools itself. And I think this panel is a prime example of that. But not to say that there's anything on the downside of being on the trades, but where you start doesn't define where you end your career within the industry. And there's so many avenues. There's so many opportunities within the industry to grow, evolve, and really, set your place for the future.
So from an education perspective, do you feel, the trade schools, the universities, are they doing a good job motivating women to get into new opportunities, new industries? Do you think there needs to be more specific courses out there? Like, how can the educational system help us?
Well, right now I'm on a board I serve on. It's a big topic, but it's not just isolated to females. It is trying to recruit people into the industry in general. The number of people that are coming up within trade schools or within different schools is not enough to replenish the retirement rates that we're seeing. So I think outside of just females, the industries are struggling to bring skilled trades in through our own domestic pool of candidates. So I'm not sure if that if I kind of sidetracked the question there, but so do I think they're doing enough to target females? I don't believe so, but I think they're struggling. The struggle is so much greater in terms of the entire skilled trades pool.
I could comment as well. I'm part of GVCA, Grand Valley Construction Association, the Legacy Builders. So we go into 2 schools a month where we play a board game through the construction lab. It's Monopoly Construction. And we talk about the industry and how to get into it and, the great things that can come from it. I think one other thing that we do for Conestoga Heavy is we bring the people to some of our construction sites, our gravel pits, our asphalt plants, and really have them included and actually, show them how to put concrete down or how to lay asphalt. I think it's really important that, those people that are influencing, we have our teachers who spend more time with our children than we do. I think we need to show them, we need to do more programs where we're bringing them in and we're showing them what the industry can really be about. And I think it's just that we just have to be educating more. And if we look, really at, legislation, I think that's something too that eventually might have to come into play, where we're having things that are legislated to make, a bigger action there. So I think we can always do more. I think there's more being done in 2024 to come, and everybody realizes that this is a challenge for everyone, and that we can do better. But that's not to discredit that what is already being done is not welcomed, and it's very important.
And what we can even do now is just showcase each other, right? Like, we've got women in our own businesses that are working hard at what they do. And I think, everyone has social media these days, and there's different ways that we can market ourselves. So why not be our own champion and show other women that, hey, there's room for women in construction because we're doing it. And look at all the great work we're doing and really celebrate that. So I think there are opportunities for using the technology even, and just making sure that we're highlighting women who are existing in our industries and what they're doing. Because I think, frankly, women just don't know. They don't know that they can be a part of this great industry of building, truly building communities and truly building networks of where people can work, play, and live. So it's, first off, it's them knowing that there is an opportunity here to really do something great, and we're doing it already. So come join us.
Yeah, I think on that point, not knowing, I don't think employers do a great job when they're recruiting of selling their companies. They sell the job description, the qualifications, the responsibilities, but they don't sell their company, they don't sell their workplace culture, which is very important to a female. And so you look at a job posting and you say, I'm really not sure what that means. And where do you go to get a better understanding of that? You don't know where to go. So I think the industry as a whole really needs to come together to put an educational campaign together of why it's so great. People, we talked about the people, the companies, the ability to go into places you would never think as a woman you would go into. It's just the coolest thing, and a great topic for cocktail parties, you know, because you get to talk about being in the bowels of a steamship, or being in a salt refinery, or being in a Stelco in a steel mill. It's fun, and that makes for great conversation. So we have about 3 minutes left. Haven't seen, there's been a few questions come in. I don't know if we've answered them through our conversation. But we will get back to the folks that did submit some questions. So are there any last parting thoughts, words of advice, things that you want to share with those that have listened to us chit chat for 50 minutes? Now's the time.
I guess I could go first. Well, there was a quick question there, and it was about somebody asking about, to go back to school to enhance their, expand their HR role, and what to go. I think important, like one thing I can say is, and would be my takeaway, Jennifer, would be, make sure that you're waking up every day doing something that you love. I mean, we all have to get up, and we all have to be there, and we all have to grind. Make sure that it's something that you want to be doing. And then, then expand your knowledge and go back to school and get different courses with what interests you. For me, it's people, it's growing there. When we talk about the culture, radiate, and what can we do better to become, a company that people want to go there. Make it easy to find information about your company. Make it easy to find how to get a job. Make it easy to talk about what it would be like to work with your company, and what the experience is there, and focus on the people that are doing the work. Highlight them and and have them answer those questions for you, and make sure that that information is there, and really just have conversations, and really just don't be ashamed to share your feelings, and just be vulnerable.
That's great. Natasha, Summer?
For me, I'm going to go back to the same thing as like the policies and procedures. And I think the reason I'm so stuck on that is because coming out of the pandemic, we are now in an opportunity to make a change. We're seeing that the focus is more people. It's people oriented. I mean, it always was, but it's really been highlighted and celebrated more now. So after coming together out of this pandemic. So take these opportunities to make that change. Use your social medias, use your website to get the publicity out there and get the messages out there. Also, try to find ways that we can be flexible in the way we are wording our recruitments and our job ads. Whether it's offering that flexible time, whether it's just changing what it always was to something new and fresh. Because I think this is the time that we're in where we need an uplift. We need something different than what was always done in the past. And we have the ability to do that. So why not do it? It's almost something that you must do. You must stand out. And I think it starts with just those recruiting efforts and trying to make sure that the language is different than it always has been in the past.
Yeah, definitely. Summer?
Yeah, I think, well, to all the women and anyone considering entering in the trades, I think the key message that I'd like to leave is that you're needed, you're wanted, and there's a place for you. And no matter what your experience or education level is, good companies are hiring. Good companies are willing to train and to work with good people, right? And one thing to females entering the industry, one thing I like to always mention is just stay authentic to who you are, and work with integrity. A lot of times you can see through intimidation or different things of maybe feeling inferior entering a male-dominant industry, is that you see people can change in who they are and how they operate. And I think, you know, to stay the course is to you know, stay authentic to who you are and lead with integrity always.
Definitely. Well, ladies, this has been great. I enjoyed our chat, and I so look forward to meeting you in person so we can continue this. And who knows, maybe we'll make this an annual thing.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.